the special Judge Judy Town Hall on governmental accountability. And the rule of law had been structured as what producers characterized as unprecedented crossover event, bringing together Judge Judy Sheindlin, whose decades presiding over television's most successful courtroom show had made her cultural icon known for a no-nonsense approach to justice and personal responsibility, and congressional members whose legislative oversight work raised questions about whether aggressive governmental investigations represented appropriate accountability or dangerous expansion of political power. That Judge Judy's judicial experience and her commitment to fairness under law would enable her to examine with characteristic directness that wouldn't defer to political authority the way traditional media often did when questioning elected officials. Judge Judy sat prominently at the town hall stage as retired family court judge whose television program had reached billions of viewers over 25 seasons with straightforward adjudication emphasizing common sense, personal responsibility, and intolerance for excuses or manipulation that her judicial experience had taught her to recognize, regardless of how sophisticated the presentation. Her reputation combining sharp legal mind with ability to cut through rhetoric to identify core issues, making her a formidable questioner whose judgments audiences trusted as reflecting wisdom earned through decades of actually administering justice rather than theorizing about it from academic or political distance. Jasmine Crockett had been invited to participate in Judge Judy Town Hall, recognizing that Sheindlin's massive audience and her judicial credibility created a unique platform where a substantive discussion about governmental accountability could reach demographics beyond typical political media consumers. Her decision to participate reflecting confidence that Judge Judy's directness would create environment for authentic dialogue rather than the scripted partisan exchanges that cable news typically produced. The town hall had been proceeding through various discussions about accountability and justice when Judge Judy had begun what regular viewers recognized as her signature approach to questioning, cutting through preliminary discussion to pose direct personal question, designed to test whether witnesses' positions reflected genuine principles or convenient political positioning. That her judicial experience had taught her to distinguish through questions about what people would do in specific situations, requiring them to choose between stated principles and personal interests, that such situations revealed more accurately than abstract policy discussions ever could. Then Judge Judy had posed what was clearly her most important question, an inquiry delivered with her characteristic combination of judicial authority and grandmother-like directness about whether Crockett would support aggressive congressional investigation if the official being investigated was someone she personally liked or politically agreed with, specifically asking whether she would advocate for same investigative mechanisms and same lack of executive privilege protection if the target was Democratic president whose policies she supported versus Republican president whose policies she opposed. Her question clearly designed to determine whether Crockett's oversight advocacy reflected principled commitment to accountability that would apply regardless of political convenience, or whether it reflected partisan positioning that would change when political tables turned, delivered with evident expectation that honest answer would reveal whether principles were genuine or were rhetorical cover for partisan preferences. That Judge Judy's experience suggested most politicians harbored despite their public claims about consistent accountability. What Judge Judy could not have anticipated was that Crockett would respond not with defensive political answer or with hypothetical principles, but rather with specific personal answer referencing the actual instance where she had publicly called for investigation of Democratic official she had personally supported and politically agreed with, despite knowing such call would create political costs for herself and her party, delivered with such emotional authenticity and with such specific detail about the personal and political difficulty of choosing principle over political loyalty that her answer would make the entire courtroom, including Judge Judy herself, audibly gasp in recognition that they were witnessing genuine principle demonstrated through actual painful choice, rather than through comfortable political rhetoric about accountability that most politicians offered when questioned about consistency. If you want to see what happens when Judge Judy poses tough personal question expecting to expose political hypocrisy and congressional Member responds with answer about actual instance of choosing principle over political loyalty that makes entire courtroom gasp through authentic demonstration of consistency. More powerful than any theoretical answer could achieve. Subscribe to this channel immediately, because we are going to examine every element of how Crockett's answer made Judge Judy's courtroom gasp and why this moment became legendary for demonstrating that questions about principle are most powerfully answered through specific examples of having actually lived those principles, when doing so required personal sacrifice rather than through abstract assertions that circumstances haven't tested. Judge Judy's Question 2 Crockett had come during the town hall segment on accountability and consistency. She had been listening to Crockett explain her oversight framework before cutting to what she clearly viewed as the essential question. Judge Judy had said with characteristic directness, "Representative Crockett, I've been listening to you talk about congressional oversight, about holding officials accountable, about investigating misconduct, regardless of party. And it all sounds very principled when you're sitting here talking about it in theory." The town hall audience had focused completely on Judge Judy. Recognizing she was building toward her signature tough question, Judge Judy had continued, "But I've been a judge for a long time, and I've learned that people's real principles show up not when they're comfortable, but when they're tested. When they have to choose between what they say they believe and what serves their personal interests or political loyalties. So, Representative Crockett, here's what I want to know. Would you support aggressive congressional investigation of Democratic president you personally like and whose policies you support? If evidence suggested that president engaged in misconduct, would you advocate for same investigative mechanisms, same lack of executive privilege protection, same aggressive oversight that you advocate for when investigating Republicans?" She had posed her challenge directly because it's easy to support accountability for people you oppose. Real principle is supporting accountability for people you support when it costs you politically to do so. So I'm asking you personally, have you ever actually advocated for investigating someone from your own party? Someone you personally supported, knowing it would hurt you politically? Or is your oversight advocacy something you only apply to political opponents? The question had been delivered with Judge Judy's characteristic combination of judicial authority and personal directness, clearly designed to determine whether Crockett's principles were genuine or politically convenient. But what happened next would make the entire courtroom gasp. Crockett had paused visibly, showing emotion, then had begun speaking with authenticity that immediately captured complete attention. Crockett had responded, "Judge Judy, thank you for that question because it's the right question to ask. And I'm going to give you honest answer, even though it's painful answer, because it involves situation where I had to choose between political loyalty and principle, and that choice cost me relationships and created real political problems for me." The town hall courtroom had become intensely focused. Recognizing that Crockett was about to share something personal rather than offering political talking points, Crockett had continued with visible emotion. In 2021, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat whose policies I generally supported, faced allegations of sexual harassment and questions about nursing home death reporting. Initially, many Democrats, including myself, wanted to believe the allegations were exaggerated or politically motivated because we valued his policy work, but as evidence mounted as attorney general's investigation documented pattern of harassment. As reporting revealed, nursing home death numbers had been concealed. I had to make choice. Do I stay quiet to protect Democratic governor whose policies I supported? Or do I publicly call for accountability, even though doing so would anger powerful people in my party? She had delivered what would make the courtroom gasp, Judge Judy. I publicly called for Governor Cuomo to resign and for full investigation of both the harassment allegations and the nursing home deaths. I did this knowing it would cost me politically, knowing it would damage relationships with people who wanted Democrats to close ranks and protect him, knowing it would give Republicans political ammunition, and it did cost me. I had Democratic donors angry with me for not supporting Cuomo. I had party officials suggesting I was helping Republicans by not staying quiet. I had people who had been political allies distance themselves because they thought I was betraying party loyalty. The courtroom sat in visible recognition that Crockett was describing actual painful choice rather than offering comfortable political answer. Crockett had continued, "But Judge Judy, the women who accused Cuomo, deserved to be believed and investigated. The families whose loved ones died in nursing homes deserved answers about whether deaths were concealed for political purposes. And my principles about accountability couldn't mean anything if I only applied them to replicants. So yes, to answer your question directly, I have actually advocated for investigating. Democratic official I initially supported, knowing it would hurt me politically. And it was hard. It cost me relationships and political capital. But that's what principle requires, supporting accountability even when it's personally and politically costly. The Judge Judy town hall courtroom erupted in audible gasps and surprised reactions. The audience clearly hadn't expected such personal, emotionally authentic answer. Demonstrating actual principle through painful choice rather than through comfortable political rhetoric, Judge Judy herself appeared visibly moved, her typically stern expression showing genuine surprise and respect. After several moments of audience reaction, Judge Judy had responded, "Representative Crockett, in 30 years of asking people tough questions, that's one of the most honest answers I've heard from any politician. You didn't give me theoretical answer about principles. You told me about actual situation where you chose principle over political loyalty and paid price for it." She had paused, then continued with evident respect. "That's real accountability. That's what I was testing for, whether your principles would hold when they cost you something. And you've proven they do. That deserves recognition, because most politicians would have given me rehearsed answer about supporting investigations. When evidence warrants without ever actually having done it when it mattered," the town hall audience had applauded, clearly moved by both Crockett's authentic answer and Judge Judy's acknowledgement of its significance. The remainder of Judge Judy's town hall proceeded with notably different atmosphere. Judge Judy's subsequent questions reflected genuine respect for Crockett's demonstrated principles, and other panelists engaged with her framework more seriously, having witnessed her prove through actual choice that her accountability advocacy was genuine rather than partisan positioning. Immediate aftermath was extraordinary. Clips of Crockett's answer and the courtroom's audible gasps were viewed over 45 million times within 48 hours, making it one of the most viral Judge Judy moments. Despite not being from her regular courtroom show, Judge Judy's massive audience trusted her judgment about people's character. So her visible respect for Crockett's answer carried enormous weight. The authenticity of Crockett's emotion while describing the Cuomo situation made clear this wasn't rehearsed political answer, and the specific example of actually having paid political price for principle made the answer more powerful than any theoretical response could have. Political commentators across spectrum acknowledged that Crockett's answer had demonstrated genuine principle. Even conservatives who disagreed with her policy positions noted that her actual advocacy for Cuomo's accountability, despite political costs, proved her consistency. Claims weren't empty rhetoric. Democrats who had been frustrated with Crockett's Cuomo stance acknowledged that her willingness to reference that politically painful situation in response to Judge Judy's question demonstrated that she viewed it as example of principle rather than as political mistake to be hidden. Judge Judy's massive audience, many of whom were skeptical of politicians generally, witnessing her test someone's principles and having that person prove through the actual example that principles were genuine rather than convenient, was powerful validation that some elected officials actually did prioritize accountability over political loyalty. For Judge Judy personally, having her tough question answered with such authentic example of principle being tested and upheld was professionally satisfying moment, demonstrating that her approach of asking direct, personal questions could reveal genuine character rather than just political positioning. For Crockett, making Judge Judy's courtroom gasp through authentic answer about painful choice demonstrated that questions about principle were most powerfully answered through specific examples of having actually lived those principles when circumstances tested them in subsequent interviews. Crockett explained that Judge Judy's question had been exactly right question to ask, whether she had actually done what she claimed to support when it cost her politically. She had decided to answer with specific Cuomo example despite knowing it would revive that political pain because authentic answer was more important than comfortable response. She emphasized that Judge Judy's visible respect and the courtroom's audible gasps. Validated approach of demonstrating principle through actual choices rather than through theoretical assertions. And that the viral response suggested audiences hungry for authentic political dialogue rather than scripted rhetoric. So, if this examination of how tough personal question about whether principles hold when tested can be answered through specific example of actual painful choice that makes entire courtroom gasp through authentic demonstration of consistency has shown you that real principle is proven through situations requiring sacrifice rather than through comfortable rhetoric, and that audiences recognize and respond to such authenticity. Subscribe to this channel for continued analysis of moments when genuine character reveals itself. The Judge Judy Town Hall, where Judge Judy questioned Jasmine Crockett, and her answer made the courtroom gasp, was more than impressive. Television It was demonstration that questions about whether principles are genuine versus politically convenient are most powerfully answered through specific examples of having actually chosen principle over political loyalty when circumstances created real costs for doing so. That authentic emotional engagement with painful choices demonstrates consistency more effectively than any theoretical assertions about accountability could achieve, and that sometimes the most powerful moments in political discourse are when elected officials prove through actual lived examples that their principles have been tested and upheld, rather than remaining comfortable abstractions never challenged by circumstances requiring personal or political sacrifice to maintain them.